Three, two, one. Hello, Joe. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Marty, it's an honor to have me on the podcast. I'm usually on the other side of things doing the questions, so a lot of pressure on me this time around, Marty.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, for anybody listening that hasn't heard of Joe before, which I very much doubt, but he has been all over the place with radio and with podcasting, of course, being the director of Forbes Books. But can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, Marty. So my career track was kind of odd. I started in radio in New York City, and all because I didn't know what to do with myself. I was a kid who loved being in show business entertainment. I had dreams of it, but I didn't have any connection to it. I was not one of these people who had contacts and knew people in show business. So I was like, the only way I could get started was with an internship. So I ended up applying for an internship at this radio station in New York, which was there for many, many decades, legendary status. And for some reason, my career kind of just took off. It kind of snowballed, starting as an intern, working my way up through becoming the executive producer and co-host of the morning show over 24 years. So that one faithful decision to do that internship and explore a world which I wasn't familiar with. And it was one of those things, Marty, where I kind of had the wherewithal, but didn't realize it, because as I came to mentor people coming up through, as interns and producers, I always told them that whatever opportunity you can to experience something before you put yourself 100% into it is the best tack to do it. And for when it comes to people in media, internships is the way to go, because I was like, hey, what if I don't like radio? What if, the only way for me to find out is if I do it, because I see a lot of people who go to school, especially here in the States, they'll go pursue a degree for 4 years or more. And then when they leave school and they get a job in that so-called degree, they hate it. And they're like, why did I do this to myself? And so I took it as an opportunity to see if this is something I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And luckily it worked for me, but only because I put myself out there. If I had waited till I graduated college and spent all this time and money and learning about media and broadcasting, and then got into it and be like, oh God, this is terrible. So I always tell folks, if you can have the opportunity, and there has been much said, Marty, about working for free, and a lot of companies are sort of steering away from that. And they're offering paid internships. But if you can manage to either work for free or for little or no money to just see if you like what you want to do for the rest of your life, I think it's a key takeaway for a lot of people, and something I've always been a real proponent of internships and mentorship, and giving people the opportunity to see if doing what they're doing is something they love or something they should do something else.
I read about this in your book, and I hope this doesn't sound stalkerish at all, but I read a part of it where you said that you had that option of going to college, like you said, or going for that internship, and it was like, okay, let's do the internship, and I suppose it worked out well for you.
I guess so. I mean, a part of me missed out on that whole college experience. And I think most people, I'll throw just a fake number. I think like more than half the people who go to college just go for the experience, and the other half are going because they have a focused goal. And I never really had that, parties and, going and on ragers and streaking on campus, all of that stuff that people see as the American college experience. I didn't live. I just saw college as a gateway to what I wanted to do next. And once I was able to get that internship while I was in school, the opportunity opened up, like you mentioned in the book, where the station I was working for said, hey, listen, we'd love to hire you, but you'd have to leave school. And it really was a no-brainer for me. I was like, this is my shot. I don't know if I'll ever get another shot, and I don't want to look back and regret that I said no to this. So, we all have regrets. People say they don't have regrets, are full of it. But that's one of those where I was like, I was glad I didn't have that regret, that I just took it on and just went at it at 100%, and it worked out, like you said.
Did you have any moments, maybe at the beginning, probably closer to the beginning of your journey, where you started questioning that, oh, I don't know if that was the right thing to do, or has it always been okay? Started day one, I love it.
It's funny, Marty. I don't think so, because luckily enough, I was interning there before the job. So I think I was very fortunate in that, like, I knew
Mm.
what I was getting into. I knew it was going to be an intense or like 24/7 kind of job. So there were no surprises. I just was starting to get paid, which was a really good
Right.
alternative. from not getting paid. So I was fortunate enough to do that, that I was able to see sort of like an outsider insider be like, okay, cool. This is how things work. And if I ended up getting a full-time job here, I would know what to expect. So I did have expectations going in, and what I didn't know was whether it was going to work out. Like there were some people who had done what I did and found themselves kind of middling about as promotions assistants, people who just did like remedial jobs and just kind of just were going through the motions and like, oh, I guess this is it for me. Luckily, I was able to advance. I was very fortunate, but I was only fortunate is because I worked my ass off and put myself out there and gave myself a shot to open up and become more successful and rise through the ranks of the company.
I'd love to pick your brain, Joe, about that because I find that many people get stuck in that okay, I'm new here, even though, like you said, you had that internship, which I suppose maybe broke the ice slightly there, but you got there and I'm sure you had your brain full of, oh, what if I don't do this well? What if this doesn't work out? And a
Yeah.
lot of these self-doubtful questions. How did you move past that, and what could you say to somebody that's having those thoughts that, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I can't do it?
Yeah. I mean, I had this moment when I started working there, Marty, and I would get in my own head, like you talked about, like you'd overthink everything you do, something all of us humans do. And I had like an epiphany one day. I was screwing up all the time when I just got hired with the morning show. And I was just overthinking every decision. I was like, am I doing the right thing? Am I pushing the right button? This is back when we had buttons and levers and stuff like that. Now everything's on touch screens. But I kept screwing up, Marty. And one day I just had this revelation, epiphany where I was like, I have to stop. I have to get out of my own way. I just have to do. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's just not meant to be. And once I was able to make that sort of intentional choice of this is me, this is what I could do. This is if and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that sort of was sort of the spark of my career. Once I was able to get out of my own way, I was able to flourish because I think we are our own worst enemy, whether it's imposter syndrome or just being too over analytical or overthinking things. If we can sort of unpeel that a little bit, we can all become better versions of ourselves, but we just get in our own way most of the time.
That just like you said, a realization that you had one day, or was it that okay, you were maybe seeing other people doing well around you and that you had that perhaps modeling that okay, they're doing it, so I can do it too? Or was it just from your own, let's say, insights that, oh, okay, I can do that?
I will say, Marty, and I talk about this a bunch, but it's because of the movie Risky Business with Tom Cruise. So there, if anyone's ever watched film, it's sort of the movie that made Tom Cruise a movie star. And I won't get into the plot details, but he was like one of these kids who was on a track to go to college, and then he kind of went a little sideways. And he came up with this line that is sort of like a running theme of the film, and he says, "Sometimes you gotta say what the f." Like sometimes you just gotta say to yourself, it is what it is. It's like they said the actual F word. I won't say it here, Marty. But sometimes you just gotta. Sometimes you just have to say, just what the heck, man. It's whatever happens happens, and it's kind of weird. I don't know, and it's not like that movie wasn't even fresh on my mind, but it was just one of those things. Like how sometimes you'll watch a film or read a book and it kind of stays with you, but it's not really top of mind. It's sort of just like in the
Mm.
background. And for some reason, that film and that line popped in my brain, and I just said it out loud to myself. I guess you just gotta say what the f. You just gotta just do it. And luckily that was my sort of spark. And I think that's why reading and watching and following people on social media, I think it's so important because the more you can learn about what made people successful or something inspirational, it will make you better because you learn from the best. And I think this is sort of like the circle of life, how everyone has always followed someone else's footsteps. So if you could see what other people did, that will make you a better person. And sometimes that could go in reverse. So I think I became better at interviewing people because I would also see what my hosts were doing in New York that I didn't like. I'd be like, I wouldn't have done it that way, or I wouldn't have said that.
Mhm.
So sometimes not only looking at the positives of mentors or people that are thought leaders in their space, sometimes it's also looking at their mistakes and flaws and saying, okay, cool, I don't want to make that mistake. I don't want to do that. So when people always say, look up to mentors and take their word for it, or just read people what they say. Also look at the stuff they screwed up, because sometimes that's sometimes for them, especially the people that have achieved a lot, that's where they've learned the most. And I write about in my book, all the stuff I write about in terms of what I learned were mostly from mistakes I made. And I share with people on a daily basis, consulting with them at Forbes Books, people who want to be podcasters. So it's just really all about keeping yourself open and learning from other people as much as you can, and then taking that and making it your own.
I'd really love to tag to that, Joe, that I feel like most people, and I know where this comes from, especially with working with people for such a long time, I've noticed that people are excruciatingly scared of making mistakes, which makes a lot of sense because when you make a mistake at school, then, oh no, you're the bad kid, and no, no, you get a bad grade. And so it makes a lot of sense. And then we carry that on into our, whether personal life or professional life. And like you said, a lot of the mistakes that we make are actually the best lessons in life. So there certainly is reason to even try to make mistakes, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why the over glamorization of celebrities and tech billionaires, you see what they achieve. Like you see like the end result, but you don't see all the failures along the way. Like Elon Musk, say what you will about him. People just see him now as this Twitter god, and he has all these followers, and he's launching rockets into space. But you have to look underneath the hood and see all of the mistakes he made before he got to where he was. And celebrities are the same way. You just see them on top of the mountain, but you don't know all the failures and bombs and things that they didn't do well that they use to fuel their success. So sometimes it's very important to see what mistakes people made, and then that allows you and gives you the freedom to make mistakes too, because like you said, we don't get better unless we kind of like correct our flaws. There's the old adage that nobody changes. I'm like, people don't change, but they can improve. Like they can improve. They may not change as a whole being, but they can improve things, whether it's being a better communicator, being better in tech, being better in business, being a better partner in life. All of that stuff is stuff we can improve on.
I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into what you said before with your 23 years of experience in the radio and, of course, with podcasting now. And I really love what you write about in your book and Good Listen about being an active listener and being able to consciously communicate with people. And I find that this is something that a lot of people are missing on. And I really like the examples that you gave in your book, that you're talking to somebody and you're, sharing your problems, and they're like, oh, hey, did you see that TikTok post? Like, are we
Yeah.
even having a conversation here? So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts a little bit, maybe deeper into to anybody that's not familiar with your book. Could you maybe give us your own definition of active listening? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I as you can tell, Marty, from our conversations and from the book, I'm a very simple person. And I feel like the reason we're not good listeners, there's a couple reasons, but one of them is we lack curiosity. So if you think about it, if you're reading a book, watching a movie, something on TV, when you lose interest, you're not paying attention, you're not listening. So it's because you're not curious about that thing. And for many of us, it's that curiosity piece, because people are like, how do you become a better listener? I'm like, well, are you interested in the thing? Because you're not going to be listening to something you're not curious or care about. So I think being as almost like your childish version of yourself, because as children, we asked a million questions and our parents said to us, stop asking so many questions. And maybe in a way, that's sort of part of our evolution, that after years and years of people saying, stop asking questions, stop being curious, that we stop doing it. Maybe it's part of it. I don't know. Not a scientist, Marty, but I think there is something to that, where people just get to a certain point in life where they stop being curious about things, stop asking questions. And so when people say, like, how can I become a better listener? It's like, well, are you curious about something? Because I don't want to force people to listen to something they don't want to. And that's the reason. But if their reasoning is because they're just not curious, that could just be a flaw in yourself. Be like, why am I not curious about this? Why am I not being an empathetic person? Am I just not interested in this topic? But that's where sort of like clarity and being transparent to people and saying, hey, listen, I'm sorry, this is just not something I'm into, or something, as opposed to just like tuning them out or something. Because I think it's more respectful to be like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not really into that. Here's my thoughts on this. What do you think? And then that creates that dialogue as opposed to you just being there. Okay, let me listen to this. Let me just listen to this. Okay, cool. All right, they're done talking. All right, let me do my thing. So yeah, I think curiosity is a big driver as to why we're not really good listeners. And I don't profess myself to be an expert. It happens to me all the time, but I do have sort of I have that little person in the back of my brain who just pops in every once in a while. So it's like, hey, snap out of it. Just pay attention here. So it's just really more about being intentional about how you interact with people instead of just being like, hey, here's what I have to say and then move on.
Do you think there is a way to create curiosity in yourself? Like you said, that maybe you're just not really into chemistry. Is there, or have you found for yourself or for perhaps other people that you've been working with, a way to create that curiosity?
I mean, I would say do what you love, and when you do what you love, you will maintain curiosity. So you're not, like you said, chemistry. You're not, and I'm not going to be curious about chemistry. I may be curious about a chemist who found some sort of gene sequence or some sort of solution that knocked out COVID. But I'm not going to be curious about chemistry. So it's really just more about being curious and looking what's underneath, not the obvious.
Mm.
So if the person you're having a conversation with is talking about something you're not interested in, maybe there's something there that you are interested in. And so just continuing to investigate, ask questions. If you ask questions, that'll also drive that curiosity. Oh, cool. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Tell me more about that. So always, the old judge a book by its cover. Sometimes we all do that, and sometimes it works. But sometimes you got to open the book and see what's inside, and that would actually drive curiosity and make you want to listen more to what someone else is saying.
So not just looking at the surface level of, oh, chemistry bad, but okay, what else can I take away from this?
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's totally. And I'm one of these people that I know just enough to be dangerous. I know a little bit about everything. And to me, I'm not a specialist in any one thing, but I can have a conversation with just about anyone because I just know just enough about something to have a conversation. And for people outside who may be listening to this and they're like, oh, well, I'm not that kind of person. You don't have to be. But again, if you're curious about the world, you'll pick up on things just organically or sort of just by osmosis, just because you're opening yourself up by reading things, by looking things, watching YouTube videos. So the more you do that, the more you become a more well-rounded person. Like I read a lot of personal development books that I maybe 10 years ago I wouldn't have read. But now I'm like, okay, cool. There's something in these books that could help me now. Maybe 10 years ago, it couldn't help me. Maybe I would have been like, well, this means nothing to me. But like now it can have impact. So a lot of it has to do with timing as well. And that's the thing with relationships, Marty. Sometimes if you meet a person at a certain point in your life, maybe you're not ready to settle down. But if fast forward 20 years, you meet that person, now is the time for you to have that connection. So timing is so important for a lot of us. And I think keeping yourself open and options open and learning more, the timing will happen because there's nothing you could do about it. Timing is timing. It's the one thing, people always say, I don't have enough time a day. Like that's true because there's only finite time. So make sure you use that time you have on this planet as impactful and make it important to you as possible.
And I think that draws a wonderful circle to what we were talking about before, that if you are self-questioning and if you're doubting yourself, then you're only really wasting time, right? Instead of, whatever, let's just do it, let's just go for it, make the most of your time. But we spend that time, oh, what if I'm not good enough? And thinking about other people's opinions and so on, where at the end of the day, it's only your life and only you can make it as great as it can possibly be. And with that, I do have a question for you. How do you manage that for yourself? How do you manage your time so that you have the greatest life on earth?
Well, it's funny that you asked that because I've been on this sort of kick about people using the word busy as their shield.
Mm.
Like, everyone, it's a shield that we all sort of now like bow down to. Like if you ask someone, hey, can you do this for me? And the person says, oh, I'm busy. Like, whoa. Okay. It's almost like a bomb has been dropped in a conversation. Oh, that means I cannot ask this person for a single thing because they've used the busy word. So funny enough, I have actually started in my brain not using that word. So whenever I catch myself where I'm about to say, it's like someone says, "How was your day?" I'll literally stop. I'm not joking. I will stop myself from doing it because I feel like it's such a generic word and it's become so acceptable for everyone that you give no context. Like if you were to ask me, Marty, like, "How was your day yesterday?" and I said busy, that doesn't explain what my day was like yesterday. So why not share it? Obviously, you're not going to do this with every person, but like if people that you care about and you want to connect with, just throwing the word busy down just doesn't help. I'll honestly say, yeah, I had like 2 podcasts. I had this one that went really well, and this other one was kind of boring. But the rest of the day I was mostly doing a lot of like just like clerical work and stuff like that, and that's it. I mean, it's not like I didn't have to go into like a 20-minute diatribe about my day or give a minute by minute a breakdown of
Yeah.
what my life was yesterday. But I think doing that, opening yourself up and letting people know like how your day was and what was part of your day, I think is so much better than just saying I was busy. Yeah, no shit. We're all busy, Marty. We all have stuff we all have to do. But there's no reason you can't open yourself up, because I think people use that again as a shield to stop them from doing something else. Like when people always ask me, I mean, obviously my full-time job is helping people do podcasts, and they'll say, how do I grow my podcast? How do I build an audience? How do I get big? And I say, do 1,000 podcasts. Like literally just do 1,000 of them and then see what happens. And obviously, if you don't love the process, love doing it, you'll stop doing it. But that's how you gain it. I mean, I use the Joe Rogan example all the time. He didn't sign a $100 million deal with Spotify because he said, hey, I should do a podcast. No, he did like 2,000 podcasts before they gave him that check. So, and, switch out podcasting for everything, whether it's a book, whether it's making a film, whether it's doing the project in your house, whether it's a relationship, whether it's seeking friends. Just, to borrow the Nike phrase, you just have to do it. And I know it's super simple and life gets in the way, but if it's something you truly want, you're never going to do it unless you do it. No one else is going to say, the old Hollywood stories of someone being found in a hair salon and being turned into a movie star. That doesn't happen. And when people say, someone became famous on social media, yeah, they didn't become famous on social media because they put one post up. They became famous on social media because they put thousands of posts up. I interviewed this author blogger Danielle Brown. She does Healthy Kitchen on TikTok. She's like 6 million followers. She said it took 8 years for her to get 1 million followers. Now, if I were to tell you that, Marty, for your podcast you do now, that it's going to take you 8 years and you'll get 1 million, would you take that, or would you be like, man, 8 years? That sounds like a long time to get. So it's really just what you want to get out of life. For her, it was all about, this is my mission in life. I want to teach people, show people the way when it comes to having a vegan diet. She didn't have delusions of grandeur. She's like, let me just do this. And eventually it took off. So for a lot of people, we just give up on ourselves. We don't give ourselves the opportunity to succeed. Mm-hmm. And going back to my career, I mean, I was throwing T-shirts out at concerts, driving around a van for a couple years. And then I worked my way up as a producer on the morning show, just basically answering phones. But just being in the mix, giving yourself a chance, that's all we got. We got to give ourselves the chance, because no one's going to give you a shot until you put yourself out there.
And I'd like to circle back a little bit to what you said, that she found her, I mean, the influencer that you just mentioned to us, that she thought that, okay, this is what I need to do, and she stuck to it. What would you say, and I've had this conversation with quite a lot of people recently, and it's a very curious topic for me. What would you say to somebody that doesn't know what their passion is or what their calling is? I find that that's a very common thing nowadays, that, okay, I've tried this, I've tried that, but I just don't really like anything. What's your say to that?
I mean, if that makes you happy, like living that life, then stop looking. Like if you're very, I don't want to say complacent, but if you're just content with what's going on in life, who am I to say, maybe that brings you joy. Maybe you having a routine 9-to-5 job, raising a family brings you joy. I know my mother. I could talk to her about like her lot in life was just making sure she was able to raise 2 healthy boys and live a healthy life. Like to her, that was what happiness was. So it's really just about not finding something to do, but like find what makes you happy. So if living a simple life and not putting yourself out there makes you happy, awesome. Good for you. I mean, but there are some people that need more. And like you said, for people that are searching for that thing to make them happy, just keep searching. I mean, I hate to, again, you know me, Marty, very simple. If you're still looking for that thing, don't give up on looking for that thing. And I know, and it could be a struggle. It could be a real pain in the ass, but we all have to do that. If that's what if we're searching for something to make us happy, or kind of replace happy with like completing us, then you just have to keep doing it until you find that thing. But if you're not searching for that thing, be happy in your life, whatever makes you happy. I think sometimes we try to judge what other people do that makes them happy. And I always say to them, what do you care? Like, you do not care. Like, it's funny, Marty, here in the United States, it's very polarized. People are always commenting on what the other side is doing or what other
Sure.
genders or whatever. And I always say, like, at the end of the day, do you really care? Like, if something happened to that person, whether they lost their job or they came, like, would you go out of your way to go, like, put them in your home? Like, if you don't care about that person, what do you care what they do? And so I think it's super important for folks when it comes to building their community, is like just surrounding yourself with people that connect with you, make you happy. That's all you need in life, really. And then sometimes you may need some cherries and sprinkles on top of your cupcake to, like, that thing you're searching for. That's cool. But as long as you have that baseline, you start with that and then you grow it out.
And what role do you think being a quote unquote good or effective communicator has in finding that life?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, if you are an effective communicator, Marty, I will say it opens up so many doors, because in this world, the old tired adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It really is true. I mean, you see it every day, whether it's in tech and business, show business. A lot of it is just like they're in the room, but they're in the room because they were able to open that door. Sometimes it may have to do with nepotism, but at the end of the day, getting in that room, you've got to find a way to stay in there. And it's just putting yourself out there and communicating with people, being intentional in your communications. I think that's why people sometimes have trouble with relationships or even have trouble at work, because they just don't find it fulfilling. Like, they just don't get anything out of it. And I don't question those people. I'm like, cool. But I will say to them, you can't complain when someone else kind of passes you by or laps you around the pool,
Hmm.
because they did that. Like, so if I never want to try to make people change, but I want them to know that it's not just about you, the choices you made that have prevented you. It's really the choices you made that prevented you from going and moving on and moving past other people, because they've put themselves out there. They've tried new things. So you again, we sometimes get into our own brain sometimes, but it's doing that, getting in our own brain, like, oh, what did I, what? And then of course, it's the whole, paradox of looking at the success paradox of, like, looking at, like, what made that other person successful, because I'm successful but I'm not happy, but they seem happy. So we could all overthink a lot of things, but being able to communicate with people, connecting with people, it's so important. And it's so easy nowadays with tech, even though I'm not a big fan of, like, texting and emailing big
Hmm.
questions and big asks. But I mean, there's a stat in my book about, like, you're more likely to get a yes if you ask a person in person as you would an email. So the more you put yourself out there and communicate with, whether it's a phone call or in person, that's how you kind of make connections. That's how you build your network. And obviously technology helps with LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, TikTok. You can connect with a lot of people, but it's really just not the same unless you're constantly connecting with that person, constantly sending messages, constantly being in that person's life. So that keeping yourself open is very important for pretty much everything in life, because nothing is just going to be handed to you.
I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into that with, like you said, putting yourself out there, like you said, opening those doors, being in that room and then trying to stay in that room wherever it is that you choose to be. How do you get through that initial barrier? Maybe any tips or tricks or something like that that you've practiced in yourself? Because I really like what you wrote about that story with Jennifer Aniston, that first time that you went out to meet her, that okay, you're trembling and oh no, is it gonna work? And but you did push through that and try to make that happen, would you say? And I heard something recently that I feel might be applicable to this, that confidence is not really about you believing in yourself, but you having enough proof and enough evidence in your past to substantiate that you can actually do something. And I found that
Mm.
really interesting because in your case, that makes a lot of sense, right? You've met a lot of celebrities and then famous people, and okay, another one and another one and another one. And then at some point, it's not really a big thing anymore. So to people, to anybody that is not really there yet, that okay, I want to put myself out there, but I'm petrified and I'm scared. Do you have any tips or tricks?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, because I work in business journalism now, and there's this really cliched term when they talk about like companies and they say, what's the secret sauce of the company?
Mm,
And it usually what that means for folks not familiar, like, what's the intangible that makes this company successful? Not the widget they sell or how much money they make. It's like, what is that? Well, like magic pixie dust thing that makes this company work. And I think for all of us, we all have to find our special sauce. Like, what is it that makes us good, great, attractive to other people? I'll give you an example. For me, it's enthusiasm. Like, I will do things with 100% enthusiasm, and it's people say to me like it's infectious. Like, they know, like, when I'm talking about something that I'm really into this. So if for me, it's like just being super excited about doing stuff I love. For other people, it could just be having a methodical approach to life. Like, it could be doing the certain steps that make you happy. So it's really just finding what your secret sauce is and then just blowing it up from that. It's like starting from that, like, what is that one thing that you really love to do? And then just explore with that. And to me, it's just being really excited about doing what I do for a living, the people I work with. And that stretches out into my life like 24/7. Again, I came from a world where I was doing a morning radio show for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 20 hours of live radio. So my life and business kind of bled together. So I was, constantly quote unquote on, but that's just me. And I don't expect people to be like that. But I was able to maintain that enthusiasm on and off the air because all of that was interconnected. That's what made me happy. So just finding what your secret sauce is and then just peeling the layers of that. And what does that mean? Like, what makes you this person? And then see, oh, this little facet of me can work in this world, or, oh, this little facet of me can work in this world. There's I remember a couple of years ago, I interviewed someone who is in HR, and this like right around the start of the pandemic, and they were like, we don't believe in transferable skills. And you might have heard this phrase before, like, if you have a
mm,
job in one world with skills, like, you cannot do that job in another job
mm-hmm.
if it was a different industry. And HR people for years said there's no such thing as transferable skills. And of course, I'm just a blanket statement, but a lot of them just saw it as, if you worked in this industry, that's industry you worked in, and that's it. But as the time has evolved, especially since the pandemic, and you've seen people pivot in their careers and lives, that we all have transferable skills. We all
Hmm.
have skills that, if we worked in education, that maybe, hey, some of those skills you have in education could work in the corporate environment, could work in entrepreneurship, could work in starting a business. So sometimes that secret sauce that I'm talking about can work in other venues. You just have to open yourself up. And the more you dig into what you do well and what you enjoy, you can find paths to success and happiness in other industries, other verticals, other realms that you probably never even thought about.
If I may to go back into your past a little bit further, have you always been enthusiastic? If you think back to yourself as a little kid, has it always been a part of you, or did you only start
Yeah.
noticing that as you started doing things that you've been passionate about?
Unfortunately for my family, yes, I've always been like this. But I will say it's one of those things that, and I write about this in the book, as you saw, and I talk about a lot, like self-awareness. When I was
Mm,
younger, I lacked total self-awareness. Like, I didn't realize that I was enthusiastic about things that people weren't, or that I was always the loudest person in the room. I just was just not self-aware. It was just me just living my quote unquote best life, as kids say. But as I got older, I realized I'm like, oh, I'm different from other people. And I think we're
mm,
all like that. We all have a little something different in us than everyone else. And it's just sort of just part of my being. But again, I've always been like this, Marty, but I just didn't realize it until I got older. And I think we all do this. Like, we fall in the self-awareness trap where we just don't realize what other people are experiencing, what even your like being does to other people.
mm,
And I think the more we can be more self-aware, and the way we can be self-aware is like a lot of stuff we've been talking about, Marty, like being curious, listening. That's how you become more self-aware of yourself and self-aware of your surroundings, because you're opening yourself up to things that you didn't realize were there. And for me, for years, I was like, I didn't know I was just kind of like enthusiastic idiot. It was like just myself. And then and then later in life, I was like, oh yeah, I guess not everyone is like me. And it's funny too, when we talk about like work and transitioning from like doing the morning show to what I do now in podcasting, I didn't realize like the skills I had that other people don't. And again, I'm not talking about like brain surgery, what I do, but like there are certain skills that are kind of intangible that I thought everyone had, like communication skills, how to do a podcast. The dummy in me just realized, oh, anybody could do this. And then as I slid over and started working with folks who were entrepreneurs who had built $1 million businesses, very intelligent, incredibly educated, they couldn't do what I do. And for some reason, I didn't realize that. And again, it was just sometimes, again, me lacking self-awareness and like taking pride in the skills and the things I was able to do. And now that's what I do today. That's how I help these people. I wrote the book for that. I was never one of these people that was going to write a book one. I never had a book bucket list, but it just so happened that I just stumbled upon the fact that the stuff I know and I'm teaching to my clients every day are something that I took for granted, but are valuable skills that can help other people.
And I want to go into curiosity that you mentioned and what we were talking about before with being curious and finding that interest in yourself and also in other people and what other people are talking about. I really like what you wrote in your book about questions and asking questions, and I feel like this is a big barrier for a lot of people. And speaking from the perspective mostly of non-native English speakers, that if I ask a question, it may look like I don't know what this other person said, or I didn't understand them, or maybe I'm going to look unqualified or maybe incompetent. And there is that barrier in the back of their heads that, okay, I shouldn't be asking questions.
Yeah.
How do you get over that? I mean, it doesn't seem like you ever had a problem with this, but with the people
Yeah.
that you're working with, how do you overcome that fear of, oh, am I being, like you said, too nosy, or am I being, too inquisitive? How do you
Yeah.
deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, in this I use a lot of metaphors when I talk, Marty, and I think for folks who have this problem, you have to think about it as the pool. When you go into a pool, especially at a hotel or a public pool, it starts at about 3 feet, and then it slowly but surely gets to 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, and sometimes 8 feet. And in a way, I think that's how we can approach conversations and communicating with people. You start really, really small. You start at that shallow end where the water's just above your ankles. And then as you become more comfortable in the water, and I'm really frightened with about cold water, Marty. Like it takes me an hour to get into a pool. It drives my wife crazy. So I think that's how people can sort of handle when it comes to opening themselves up, asking questions, is because you start small. You start with little things. And I know
Mhm.
people like kind of like crap on small talk, but like you need small talk to get to the big talk. So if you start small, like pick up on something. If you're someone who's just learning the language and having trouble getting over that barrier and connecting with people, just asking people like, tell me about your kids. Do you have a dog? Tell me about your partner. Those little things that seem so innocuous can open up little rifts in like little cracks in the mountain to let you in. And if you think about it in that direction, in terms of like thinking really, really small, thinking about the tiniest little, if you see someone wearing a certain hat or a certain shirt, I'm like, I really like it. Where did you get that hat? It's so, and I know I'm kind of just making it sound like it's just super like ABC, very simple, but it's harder than it is the way then when you actually start to do it. But for folks like that, Marty, and my parents were immigrants, so they learned a lot of their English from watching game shows. So I always joke that like my mom got her English degree from watching Jeopardy. But it's just start taking those small steps of just getting a little sliver of someone's sort of feedback or knowledge. Then you can start to dig into really, really heavy questions, because by then they know the other person, the other partner, your scene partner, whatever, what have you. They know, oh, this person is coming from a good place. This person's curious about me. He's asking questions about my dog. He's asking questions about my family. I feel comfortable asking and answering questions and asking the other person questions. So I always say to folks, and this gets into the introvert extrovert thing,
Mm.
regardless of whether you have a language barrier or not. It's just sometimes people feel like I can't do that. Well, you can ask a simple question, whether you're an introvert or experiencing a different culture, different language. Starting small, really tiny questions can grow and blossom into something bigger. So for folks like that, I'm totally sympathetic, because my parents went through it. My grandmother, God rest her soul, barely was able to speak English after living in the United States for like 30 years. So I get it. It's really, really hard. But if it's something that you really want to do, because there are cultures, I mean, I'm not speaking out of turn. There's some cultures that are like, they come to a different country and they're like, hey, I'm not gonna assimilate. I'm just gonna speak my own language. I'm gonna stick with my community, and that's cool. But for some people who want to break away from that, who want to grow, take those small, tiny little steps, open up that crack, and then run right through it.
Is there something that you look for specifically when you ask people questions? What you mentioned, and I feel like this is more or less widely known that body language is also a huge part of communication. So when you ask people questions or when you talk to people just in general, do you look very much at their facial expressions, if they're frowning, if they're, maybe their eyebrow is twitching or something like that? Do you look at that very closely?
It's funny you ask that because I was talking to someone about body language the other day, and I think sometimes people put too much pressure on body language.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is because we're all so socially awkward with our bodies. Like, I don't dance, Marty. So like if music's playing, like I wouldn't like move my body because I would feel weird. And I think sometimes a lot of people are uncomfortable in their own skin. So something that may appear to be a tell, the way someone's body moves or something like that, it can, you could sometimes read too much into it. But when it comes to trying to give yourself an in with someone, I think coming at it from kindness and enthusiasm, and I know no one's going to be as enthusiastic as me. I get it, I'm pretty obnoxious. But if you can be excited about talking to someone, people feed off of that. You watch it in talk shows all the time now. If you watch like late night talk shows in the United States or even in Europe, the host is effusive of the guest. Like, oh my God, I'm your biggest fan. I love everything you do. And obviously it's a little over the top, but them doing that makes the person relax. I'm like, oh, cool. This
Mm.
person's a fan of mine. And we certainly won't be running into people that we're fans of. But if you show that you're interested in another person and that you really want to know more about them, it's just like being on a talk show and asking questions, except you're not talking about the latest Fast and the Furious movie. You're talking about, oh, I'm so excited. That's so great, that thing you did. Oh, I love how your car looks. I love your shoes. Like those little things that seem so innocuous go such a long way. So if you come at it from a place of kindness and being excited to meet someone, those little steps can open up such a world to you because it's people you want to be connected with. So why wouldn't you be excited? Like, sometimes you're like, oh, I just don't like when they go to whether it's like a corporate meeting or a
Mm.
mixer or something, they're like, oh, I just don't want to be there. Well, you're not going to be excited. You're not going to want to talk to anyone. And so don't put yourself in that sort of venue. Just don't do it. But if you want to rise to the ranks of a company and you feel like, hey, my one way to do it is to hobnob with people, ask them questions, shoot the shit, then that's what you got to do. That's just life. There's certain things we all have to do to succeed. And sometimes we got to swallow things we don't like to do. But as long as it's not torturous or toxic, you work through it and then you find your joy in the moment.
And you're very right here, Joe, and it's so much of it, or even all of it, I may say, is all in our heads. That
Mm.
sometimes you get stuck in that, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to be here, I'm busy, what we were just talking about, right? And then you put yourself in that mindset yourself. It's not even the surroundings and it's not even your environment, it's just you and your brain lying to you and, oh no, we don't want to be here. Let's go and sit on the couch and eat ice cream.
Yeah.
But no, I will choose to be here. I'll choose to be present. I'll choose to be open and choose to talk to people, certainly.
Yeah. And there's two ways to look at it. Like I say to folks, like, think about it the last time you were at a party. When you were at that party, were you basically with one other person chatting for 2 hours, or were you bouncing all over the room? At the end of the night, you probably will have a good time either way. So you might have had a blast just chatting with one or two people in the corner of the room, or you might have been the person that had a blast talking to everybody in the room. It's really just finding that joy and really just living in that moment. So if you don't care about just like gossiping with the other 20 people in the room and just want to talk to this one person, cool. That's great. That makes you happy. If the other person's happy with that, great. If it makes you happy being a social butterfly, bouncing all over the place, talking to people, great. Do that too. So there's so many ways to skin a cat, to use another goofy phrase, but there's so many ways to open yourself up and connecting with people. That doesn't necessarily have to mean like you have to be the type A personality walking in the room and talking to everyone. It could just be at the end of the night you spoke to two people, and as long as you had fun, you enjoyed it. And then if it was a corporate setting, maybe that conversation, one or two people, can open things up for the next time, or maybe it can open up opportunities in your own career. So just find whatever makes you happy. If it makes you happy just talking to one person for 2 hours, awesome. If not, go ahead and just talk to everyone in the room.
And tell me, Joe, this is very interesting with what you're saying. Do you believe in the fake it till you make it scheme?
Uh yeah, I honestly think that that phrase is sort of like it's from the grind mentality of, just grind things out and
Hmm.
everything's going to work out in the end. I honestly think fake it to make it's a cop out. I think people who use that phrase use it from in more of a kind of ironic, kind of a humorous way. I think like I don't think anyone can fake it. Like I really don't think you could, because you might be able to fake it in an instant in one interaction, but you can't live your life faking it till you make it. And I've used that phrase too, but I use it more again as a joke than anything else. I really don't think you can succeed in life if you're not your true self. In the book, I write about be yourself at 11. There's another movie reference. I apologize. The movie Spinal Tap. One of the members of this fake rock band, they have an amp, and most amps go up to 10, but his went to an 11. And they said, why not just make 11 10 and that'll be the loudest? He goes, because this one goes to 11. That was the joke. I did a terrible job of explaining it, but I use that for an example for people like when you're out, whether you're doing a podcast, a presentation, whether you're at work, whether you're in an event, be yourself, but be yourself at 11. And what I mean by that is be your most heightened self. Like be the
Hmm.
best version of yourself. Be the best listener. Be the best communicator. Be the most present you've ever been in your life. And that's not faking it. That's just you. Like if you see media personalities, they're themselves on television, that's them that they'll be in an off camera, but that's them at this really heightened and extreme self.
Hmm.
And I think if we can keep that in mind when it comes to like, especially like big moments, whether it's, a job interview, meeting some, going on a first date, if you're yourself at 11, you're your true self, but you're just so ultra heightened and almost like you've got like the spider sense, like the spider tingle. Like
Yeah, yeah.
this is me right now. And if you can keep that sort of frame of reference of like, okay, this is me, but I'm just going to be the best possible version of me for the next 5 minutes, for the next 10 minutes, for the next 20 minutes. If you can do that, that's being your true self, but being yourself at an 11.
That's a really wonderful analogy. I've never heard that before.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I guess I'm not as dumb as I thought.
I guess not. I guess not.
No.
And there is another part of your life that I wanted to touch on and then connect it to communicating. Also, I've seen that you also did improv, comedy improv,
Yeah.
and I really wanted to look into that and see because I feel like this is another one of those things that most people are, or maybe not most, but a lot of people are scared of. Even these day-to-day interactions with strangers, let alone making a quote unquote fool of yourself with these strangers in front of
Yeah.
strangers. So, would you say that that was a big step for you in terms of your, again, quote unquote confidence or that, letting yourself out, or how has that benefited you?
To be honest with you, I used improv as a tool. It was another tool in my toolbox. So I got into improv much later in life because I was one of these people. I'm just too busy to do everything else. So I was just so busy working on this morning show on very little sleep. I used to have to wake up at 3 o'clock every morning for a 6 a.m. morning show. And it was just a grind. It was really tough, but I loved it. I loved every second of it, but it was just really tough to be open to doing new things. But
Mm.
again, it was one of those things as I got older, became more self-aware. I'm like, I need to try these different things. I like to try things that when I was younger, I always wanted to do, whether it's sketch comedy, improv, performing on stage. So I was very fortunate that living in New York City, improv in the 2000s was everywhere. You can see a live improv show in New York City 7 days a week in three different locations. Like that's how much improv was all over New York. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, a lot of these theaters had to close down. Some of them are coming back online again, but it was everywhere. And then a lot of these theaters offered classes. So I signed up for a class at UCB, which is the Upright Citizens Brigade, famous for Amy Poehler, many other actors that who ended up on Saturday Night Live here in the States or became movie stars, worked their way up through UCB. And one of the things that's improv that I always say to people, if there's an improv school or class or something like a night thing that you do, I think it should be a requirement for every human being. Like there are so many things that you can learn about yourself and that can improve the person you are by doing improv. A lot of the stuff we've discussed already, Marty, whether it's the listening skills, the best improvisers in the world are not the smartest or funniest. They're the best listeners. They're really good at that. One of the things that I think kind of ties into what we are just talking about, I had this improv teacher, Anthony Tamanik, who was famous for a little while. He was in 30 Rock and he did this Donald Trump satire talk show on Comedy Central. But he said this to me once in class, and I'll never forget it. And I think it's a lesson that people can keep in mind for the rest of their lives as well. When two people are doing an improv scene, it usually starts with two. It could be more. When two people start an improv scene, it's basically a scene that's improvised from thin air. It's two people creating this moment. And he said to me and the class, when you're starting this scene, think about this scene as the most important day in these person's lives. This is not a mundane day where they go down to the deli and grab a lottery ticket and a drink and walk away. This is the most important day in their life. And if you take that super heightened sense that we were just talking about, Marty, and when you are having an interaction with somebody, whether it's an important moment in your personal life or your business life, if you treat that moment as the most important day of your life, you will be so attuned, so in the moment that everything else will be shut out. All the other exterior noise, stuff going on in your life, things not going well in relationships, all of that will be shut out because all you care about is this moment is the most important moment in your life. And it's funny, I didn't think about it till afterwards. If you think about when you watch a film or read a book, it's not the moment in these characters' lives where it's just like, nothing happened. It's the most amazing thing that happened. Either this person became a superhero or there was a traumatic experience in a relationship. It's the most important day in these people's lives, the characters you're watching unfold. And with improv, yeah. And I didn't think about it either, Marty. And so if you think about taking that skill from improv and extrapolating that out and putting that in real life, if you come in something where this moment, this interaction with someone is the most important thing. And if you want to say, if you say maybe important thing in your life is too extreme, but if you say, hey, this interaction I'm having with this person, this is the most important thing I'm going to do all day. Most important thing I'm going to do all day is having this conversation. And I think if we have these little tools and tricks that we've been talking about, just being curious, being of the moment, treating something like meeting someone for the first time or having this meeting as the most important thing you're going to do all day, having all that stuff will keep you so attuned, and it'll take you from like a amateur to a professional in mere seconds, because you have all the tools you need to be the best communicator you can be. And you don't have to be a type A personality, obnoxious like myself. You can do all of these things if you're able to take all these little things and put it into action every day.
Well, this certainly is the most important conversation that I'm having today, so
good. Thank you.
That you mentioned that. But do you think that improv, and that's always been very interesting for me, do you think that it takes a lot of creativity as well? Because I mean, no?
No, it's funny because when the improv teachers always say is like, don't try to be funny. An improv scene is finding it's the phrase they use in improv is the game. And I'll take you a little inside. So when two people are doing a scene, it's called, and you find something unusual, that's called the game of the scene. So, and this can be again used in any kind of medium, whether it's television, sitcoms, movies, books, finding that thing that's the game, the unusual moment, and then you find it, identify it, and you heighten and explore it. So when two people are doing a scene, they could just be talking, shooting the shit, random little things, and then one person finds the unusual. And then once that person finds the unusual, they heighten it. And then the partner sees that, identifies that, and they heighten it as well. And it builds on top of itself. So that's why when you're creating something in real life, whether it's writing, producing a film, find that unusual thing, because that's the thing. If you think about like any story or any kind of work of fiction, even nonfiction, it's the unusual that stands out. And when you're creating a work of fiction, you're writing an article, newsletter, you're trying to be a thought leader in your space, find what differentiates you, differentiates that thought, and build on that thought. And so when you ask about being creative, sure, obviously, if you're Robin Williams or you're one of these comedic geniuses that can spout like funny things on an instant,
Yeah.
sure, those people are going to be really good at it. I'm not saying that everyone who does improv is going to be great at it, but I will say you can do improv without being the funniest person. You could just be, again, if you're curious about something and exploring the scene and like, oh, okay, cool. This is weird. What else is weird about this?
Mm.
And I'm not going to try to bore you with like really bad improv doing it with you, but just think about like when you're watching an improv scene or seeing people do play something out, they're always finding that thing, that one thing. And in
Mm.
comedy, they call it the game. You can and use that phrase in your own life. Like find that game, find what is the most unusual thing, and then build on it.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And especially from the perspective that, I mean, improvisation is essentially just what we do every day having conversations. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not a script that I'm reading from, and you're not either. So I suppose it's all it comes down to, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the skill sets are very much the same, but again, heightened. Like they're on stage, they're being watched, so they know that they can't just mumble while they're talking, or they have to project their voices, and they've got to be big personalities. So it's just really like levels of communication, and that like the people that are great improvisers, they're like the best of the best. That's why corporations bring in improv coaches to teach at their companies. Like they do all over the world. Like the biggest companies in the world will have a day where they'll have someone come in and teach people improvisation. Why? Because they know all of those skills are really, really important. And just picking up a couple of things in one session can help a team or company grow or bond faster because they have these little skills that they've picked up on because of improvising.
And do you think that it helps you to strip away that level of self-awareness almost that,
Mm.
oh, what will they think of me? Is that good enough? Just do it.
Absolutely. Oh, no question, Marty. I mean, one of the things is, and I've said it in this conversation today, is get out of your head. Like
Mm.
everyone who's ever improvised knows this. And if they have a teacher, they'll say, get out of your head. Because what happens is, especially with improv, to peel the onion a little bit, when you are doing a scene with another person, if you are in your head, not listening to what the other person's giving you, you're not able to find that game. You're not able to hide and explore because you're so deep in your head. You're like, what can I think of? What kind of funny line and that's why I say
Mm.
don't try to be funny. Like don't try to think of like what kind of funny retort can I say here? I'm not even listening to what this person's saying. I'm just trying to think of something funny to say. And so the best improvisers are people that like can stay out of the head, live in the moment. And
Mm.
and I think that's what we've been talking about in terms of like we get in our own way. People that have great scenes in improv, it's because they're just there. They're not thinking about something funny to say or thinking about, oh man, do I have to put gas in my car today? No, they are just in that scene right there, right now.
And tell me, Joe, for anybody listening that wants to hear more of your wisdom and that wants to find you somewhere else, where do you live?
Oh, yeah. You could Google me at Joe Pardavila. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. My book, Good Listen, is available wherever you buy books. And I have like a newsletter on Substack and good and Medium if you want to check that out. All my links are all on my social medias. But my goal in life now, Marty, is just like I feel very fortunate, very privileged, and very lucky to have the life I've lived and have a job that I was very fortunate to have for many years. And now the job I have now is just really, really fulfilling. And my mother always told me growing up that she didn't care what me and my brother did for a living, did not care. She said, I just want my two sons to be happy. And I found my happiness, and I'm just trying to do whatever I can now to have people find their happiness.
And that's a very nice farewell message, I'd say.
I hope so.
Wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today, Joe. I think we covered some very significant points, both for, of course, communication, but life in general, it seems. So I very much appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Marty. It's a privilege to be on the show, and good luck.
Thank you very much. Hey, I'm glad to see you here. Let me know what you most enjoyed about this conversation, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Do zobaczenia.